Hello friends, how are you doing? What is up? I'm Nala. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Today, kids are in bed, the husband is out of town, so I could think of nothing better to do than to sit down and chat with my book besties about the mid-year freakout tag. I genuinely love seeing people do these mid-year freakout tags. This is the time of year where I tend to find really good booktubers, and I get a really good idea of what their taste is in books and whether or not I'll mesh with, the kind of recs that they recommend. And so I just love these so much. And this is my very first one that I'm putting in the booktubers. So I hope that you enjoy, and I hope that we have something in common. And if you do, let me know down below. Number 1, the best book that you've read so far in 2024. Really popping off with the hardest question here. Wow, this is literally the only one that I didn't have an answer for, and I look here at my shelves and I'm like, I genuinely don't know. That's like asking me what my favorite song is. I read so many different genres, so it's so hard. But if I had to choose one right off the top of my head, so far I loved Just for the Summer. I gave it 5 stars, of course, which, like, if you are in the book space at all, I'm sure you've heard about this book. Basically, it is about Emma and Justin. So Emma is a traveling nurse with her best friend, and they end up seeing this subreddit. It's basically this guy has been having this problem where every time he starts dating someone within 3 dates or something, they end up breaking up, and the person that he dated finds their true love, they get married, and this has just been happening to him constantly. And she's like, that's really interesting. That's been happening to me as well. And so they end up to decide dating for a while to try and break this curse. And this book, the reason that I love it is that it is so much more than just romance. Abby Jimenez has quickly become like a very well-loved author for me because she puts more than just romance into her book. She puts like these life lessons and just these reflections that you can really work through. I basically called this free therapy in a book because it works through a lot of hard, heavy topics, not only to do with like relationships with yourself, but relationships with other people other than romantic relationships as well. And I just couldn't get enough of this. And this is actually the 3rd book in a series, so I need to go back and read the first 2 that are in this because I've got a feeling I will really love it as well. It has really good representation for neurodivergent characters. The best sequel you've read so far in 2024. To be honest, have not read a ton of sequels, but there is one that has really stuck out to me this year, and that is Heartless by Elsie Silver. Everybody was telling me whenever I started this series that the first one is good, but oh my gosh, the second one is just chef's kiss. And they were not wrong. Kate Eaton is a different type of man. It was done so well. I don't really know too much what to say. Cade is the father of a 5-year-old little boy living on this ranch, the Wishing Well Ranch, and he needs a nanny for the summer to take care of his son. And so in the first book we had Summer, and so in the second one we have Willa, who is Summer's best friend. She is just this fiery, free-spirited character, while Cade is a more serious type of like man. It's very grumpy, like sunshine, and they butt heads from the beginning, and it was just such a ride, and there were some pretty great scenes in here. Personally, I'm not a huge steam kind of reader. I tend to just glaze over it, but this, I enjoyed it. New releases that you haven't read yet but want to. So the first one that I have is actually a pretty new release, and that is Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. I've been seeing everyone and their moms reading it recently. I just finished Bride by Ali Hazelwood earlier this year. Of course, I loved it. I hear that this has a little bit more steam in it, which I don't really care. Okay, number 4. The most anticipated release for the second half of the year would have to be Lady Macbeth. And it's going to be coming out around the best time for a spooky, moody, gothic kind of read. And that cover, oh my gosh. The biggest surprise, I might get some flack for this, but I don't care. Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I went into this book thinking that I was gonna have the best freaking time. This whole book was just, how do I say this? Well, being nice. If you read The Hunger Games, or I think Red Queen is the other one that it's often compared to, it is basically just a rework of that. Kind of seems like a fan fiction almost based off of that. The world building was so flat. I feel like we didn't even scratch the surface. The ending, where there was supposed to be like this really big event, was so, you'd think after years and years and years of like this rebel group planning, and it completely felt like the whole plot line, the whole trials and everything was giving very much so like Peeta and Katniss, and I felt like it was if Peeta and Katniss like ate some aphrodisiac chocolate or something and were just ready to like pounce one another, you know? I do not care for this book at all. I gave it a 3-star. Really probably should have given it like a 2.5. It just feels like a copy and paste. The only reason that I think that I have been more kind about this is because Lauren Roberts, I love her strive. I love that she is young and she is achieving very big things. And the fact that she was a teenager when she wrote this, and she has been published and sold thousands upon thousands of copies, I think that is a really big feat, and I think that is incredible, and power to her. I've got no problems with her, but I really do hope that in the next book that this series and the characters and the plot can branch off and be something on its own. Because really, it just felt like this was just a book to see how many tropes you could fit in. And I think Lauren says herself that she literally just wrote this as something that she would want to read. And so that's why it has all of those tropes included. She never really intended to publish it or anything. She obviously plans to publish it at some point. It is a published book. She has publishers. But it's obviously a hit for some people. For some people, this is like their 6-star book, and that is okay. I'm not judging people who really love this book. It is just really not for me. And I so wish that it could have been, because the way that people talk about this book, you would think that it literally will change your life. It was a very big disappointment. My favorite new author, debut or new to you. And so the new author for me this year is Abby Jimenez. Like I said, I want to go now and read every other book that she's ever written, because not only do I just mesh really well with her writing style, but she also has a lot of sort of reflective points that really hit home for me growing up. And so I just know that her and I are going to get along really well. I love that she gives her characters so much more purpose than just falling in love in the books. I can find myself getting bored really easily whenever the sole purpose in a book is just for these two characters to get together and bang. There's just so much more depth, and the characters really relate to one another on an emotional level before anything physical is even considered. And that's the kind of romance books that I enjoy. Newest fictional crush. And this one might be a hot take. I don't know. And that is Cadawan from Mother of Death and Dawn. My love for him began in Children of Fallen Gods. He is just such a complex, morally gray character that he starts off as this man who is very stoic, very well-spoken, just a calm, radiant presence. He's not like your typical morally gray character that just wants to do bad things because he wants to be bad. He does bad things because that's what he feels is right for his people and to protect those he loves. But his character is just still a very honorable man, someone that everybody respects very highly, and he can also be very tender. Oh, I love him so much. Whenever people are reading this book, they tend to like sway towards Max, and I'm just like, Max is cool and all, but Cadawan is where it's at. And I love that he's able to be this morally gray, complex character that we kind of like are, Cadawan, please don't go down this road. But it's also a little bit understandable as to how he got there. He is just, Somebody needs to write more books with men like Cadawan, because I ate that shit up. Book that made you cry. A book that made me cry recently is Circe, Madeline Miller. And I did not think that this book would make me cry. For a while, it was kind of really hard to get into because there's a lot of characters' names to learn. Even, like, I enjoy mythology, Greek and Roman, but I'm not super well versed in it. I could not tell you every single person that there is or what they represent or their stories or their pasts. I knew a tiny bit about Circe and I know a tiny bit about people here and there, but just not a whole lot. And so going into this, I really didn't know what was going to happen. She is born into this world of gods who are very arrogant. They're very narcissistic and just not very kind people. And she is this kind, gentle soul who wants nothing more than to just have a connection with her people, and they refuse to give it to her. After a while, she learns that she has these powers, and as the gods learn this as well, she is cast out to her own island in solitude, and there she builds her home and really hones in on her magic. Eventually, humans, mortals, come to visit her, and she's pregnant. And so we get this really beautiful insight into friendship, into her solitude and discovering herself, into honoring the land around her, and as well as this beauty that she finds in motherhood, and how it is just so raw and terrifying, and how you want the absolute best for your child. How it's so terrifying, you don't know what the right thing is to do, and how you can become so angry and overwhelmed at times, but meanwhile, you want nothing to ever harm them or hurt them, and it quite literally, like, can drive you insane. And I just found it so incredibly beautiful. And yeah, there's a lot of quotes in here that just really hit home for me, and this is probably be one of my favorite books for a long time to come. A book that made you happy. This was on my Kindle. I don't have it downloaded necessarily right now, but Cold Hearted by Heather Goddard. This one is just a random one that I found on a subreddit. I really didn't think too much about. I was doing a werewolf romance themed vlog. Saw it and I was like, you know what, fuck it, let's download this one. And that happens to be probably one of the best romance books I've read all year. And I'm so eager to read her second book, which is Hot Blooded, which is a vampire romance. The reason that I loved it was because it was just done so well. Again, I'm not somebody who wants the spice immediately right off the back. It's not a race to the finish line. It's about the journey and how we got there. I needed that connection between two people. I needed that angst. I needed the tension. And so Cold Hearted is about our main female character. Can't tell you her name. I'm so bad with names. I could probably Google it, but it doesn't really matter. Our female protagonist, she has applied to become a teacher in Alaska, and she gets accepted. She's been in this very toxic, very dangerous relationship before. She breaks up with that guy, and she's like, I want to be a teacher in Alaska. Let me apply there. I want to be away from my family. I want to be away from this toxic situation. I'm going to go where nobody knows me, and I'm going to take it to the extreme where literally no one can ever find me. And so she goes to Alaska, and this town, everybody knows everybody. You cough or you sneeze, and people across the town will know what's up. And so she flies in on this plane, and the pilot that was flying the plane is very standoffish with her, very like husky, gruffy kind of man, except he is also a gentleman. He would not let her carry her bags. And he was basically, like, from the get-go, just very gentlemanly, but also just, like, not trusting whatsoever. So she goes to stay in this lodge, and we get to see her really come out of her shell and blossom and work through this anxiety and trauma that she's received from the past toxic relationship that she was in. And she comes to find her hobbies that she loves all over again. Like, she really loves knitting. The main male character, he ends up buying some yarn, but like doesn't tell her. He just leaves it on her door, and they end up having like this war of putting the yarn back and forth on each other's doors, and it just like it's just this whole cute thing. And anyways, you know, it's a werewolf romance, so Everybody in the town knows that there's werewolves except for the female main character, and it just was so good. You guys, if I could recommend one book really truly you could give a shot, it would be this one. It is such a quick read. It's just like a few hours long and genuinely like one of the best books this year. Honestly, that could be like the book that surprised me this year too. Most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. Lore of the Wilds. Very, very beautiful. Signed up for the Fairy Loot Romantasy box, and this was the first one that they ever released. And it is just so incredibly stunning. The gold foil. Whoops, excuse me. The gold foil on the outside, the gold foil on the end papers, the naked hardcover. Like, look at this. The double-sided dust jacket. So incredibly gorgeous. And then we've got the sprayed edges. Just beautiful. I love seeing it sitting on my shelf, but it's such a shame that this book doesn't hold up to the beauty on the outside. This is supposed to be an adult romance, and it reads very much so the female protagonist as if she was like 14 years old, and there's some spicy scenes in here, and so being stuck in that narrative voice where she seems so young is really off-putting and jarring, and it's really such a shame because I see this sitting on my shelf and that's all I can really think about is how her voice is so adolescent and young. Not like a huge fan of that. So, but it is incredibly beautiful. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? There's one series here that I am like, you need to read this before the end of the year. And that is the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know too much about it. I like to go into my books not knowing a lot about them, but this is a book that I've seen everybody give 5 stars. It is a sci-fi, it is very dystopian, and it is a winner of the Hugo Award. I don't even know what it's about, really. Yeah, the back doesn't give me any information either, so... But this is one that I would really like to read. My favorite author so far this year is by far Brandon Sanderson. I've been slowly making my way through his books. I've read Trust of the Emerald Sea, Warbreaker, and Mistborn. And then you can see I have a few other ones up here that I'm trying to get through. I know I'm not going to get through all of them for this whole year, by the end of the year, but that's okay. Brandon Sanderson, easily, I know that whatever he writes, I'm gonna enjoy. Books that I've been putting off. After I hold up this first book, you're gonna completely understand why it's taken me so long to get into it, and that is Priory of the Orange Tree. I feel like this is the one that everybody is really intimidated by, and rightfully so. I mean, it's massive. There will come a time when I will read this. I will. The other two, which there's really no reason that I'm putting them off other than I just have intimidated myself and got into my own head for no reason at all. So I have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I know that it's gonna be so good. I know it is. I even have Hellbent on my shelf as well. So why have I not read this yet? I know I'm gonna love it. And then the other one is Babel. And the reason that this has taken me so long is because every other review or video that I've seen of people reading this book, they said that it is so heavy on the info dumping. But I know that R.F. Kuang is just such an amazingly talented writer that it's gonna be good. I just know it's gonna be really heavy. A book that you enjoyed with mixed reviews. For this one, I chose Legends and Lattes. I read it earlier this year through audiobook, and I think that it really depends on what format that you read it through, because if you read it physically, you don't really get the ambiance and the experience as what you might whenever you read it through audiobook. For me personally, since I read it through audiobook, it really felt like I was sitting there in the coffee shop in a little booth just observing, kind of seeing what was going on between all of the characters. But most of everything takes place within the coffee shop, so it just really genuinely felt like I was overhearing people's conversations. I was being a little bit of a nosy posy. But yeah, I really enjoyed the experience through audiobook. It was good. Series that you want to finish before the end of the year. For sure, Mistborn. I just finished reading the first one like a week ago, And I know that next month I want to move on to The Well of Ascension. So the other two in the series, the first generation of Mistborn, is The Well of Ascension and The Hero of Ages. And I feel like it can be done. It may be very deceiving, but this tiny little book was 24 hours via audiobook. That's absolutely insane. So my guess is that these are probably going to be around like 30 plus hours. It's going to be crazy, but well worth it. I really, really enjoyed this. I think that Brandon Sanderson does such an incredible job in developing his characters, and it really feels like his characters have known each other for years upon years, and I love their banter and interactions. I love how he writes his female characters and how they're so powerful, but they're not overpowered. They do have something that sort of holds them back that they can overcome. He just really has it nailed down so well. Whenever I was first starting my reading journey over again, I was kind of staying away from all male authors because I just didn't like the way that they wrote women. Brandon Sanderson is one of those where, more often than not, I think his protagonists are women, and he does a really incredible job of writing them. And I really appreciate him for that. You can tell he really respects women. So yeah, 5-star predictions for the rest of the year. Mistborn and the 5th season. Do you think you'll reach your reading goal? Are you going to change it? So my reading goal is currently set to 100 books. And if I'm not wrong, I believe I'm only 1 book behind, which I've been keeping up with pretty well. I think that if I really sit down and I maybe do like a 24-hour reading vlog, or I switch my screen time for reading, or just even pick up a graphic novel or two, I could really get ahead of that goal, if not just like right aligned with it. I've been doing pretty well, honestly. I'm very surprised at myself because sometimes I tend to make these really big goals and I don't live up to them. And in this case, I really am sticking to it and I'm very proud of myself. Any new goals for the rest of the year? Honestly, I know that I just said that my reading goal of 100, which is a lot, but I want to be reading more quality than over quantity. It's been a few books that I have seen recommendations for online that I really thought that I was going to fall in love with, and I either DNF'd them, gave them a 2-star, or I picked up and I just couldn't vibe with at all. Or just like immensely disappointed me. So I would really prefer to kind of sit down and just really pick and choose and read stuff that I just know is going to align and just genuinely bring me to joy. Because I'm not trying to read books where I'm like, oh, I might like this. I just want to read books that I know that I'm gonna love. That is the tag. If you are interested in doing this tag or answering these questions, I would love to read them, or I would love to watch them, wherever you do it. Please let me know. Or if you would like to answer any of these questions down in the comments below. Also, please, let's chat about it, because if it's one thing that I love to do, it's that I like to yap. More specifically, yap about books. So, and with that, I will bid you adieu and bid you good night. I hope that you have a wonderful day. And of course, stay excellent.